G'day guys, welcome back to Supercoach Swordplay and welcome to the first edition of the Supercoach stock market for 2025. That intro music gets me pumped, gets me up and going because we know that we are in the full swing of Supercoach season. This week is arguably the most important week to get your trades right. We've got player price movements, some are going up, some are going down. You can see some popular options either as trade in or trade out for this week. And if you are new to the channel, firstly, thank you very much for joining me. If you're not familiar with the stock market video, I started this series up a few years ago and it's really what started to build my channel. Originally, the reason behind the videos was just to try to help out the community, particularly those people that didn't have access to or couldn't afford the Supercoach Gold, to dive deep into all of the stats, mainly being the break-even. So I do go through all the break-evens here, take a look at some projections, and give my take on whether or not I think these players are good trade-in options, trade-out options, ones to watch. We talk about the traps, the must-haves, the potential keepers, those looking at future DPP. We have a great discussion about every relevant player here, so I hope that you enjoy. We've got a number of symbols as well. If you're familiar and a bit of an OG of the channel, you know what all the symbols mean. If you don't, it may take a little while to get your head around that, but I may even do a separate video where I discuss all of the notes and little symbols that you will see throughout the video. Thank you to everyone that did donate as well last year. Certainly something that you don't have to do. What I've decided to do this year as a reward for those people that do donate is to do an individual player slide upon request from you. So anyone that donates, please let me know a player that you would like me to do a bit of a deep dive on for next week's stock market, and I'll give you your own individual slide. If you're a member of the channel, check out the Google Drive because all of these slides will be copied there and you can use them at your leisure as well. So I'll tell you what, we've got a bumper stock market video coming up. I'd completely forgotten how much time it takes to produce these videos. So it's currently about 1 o'clock on Wednesday night. So I'm hoping this will be out by Thursday morning. I'm going to have a few bags on the eyes, I reckon, tomorrow morning. But it is all worth it to help out the community with the first Stocky of the year. So for those of you that know where we're going, you know exactly what we're doing. We are going to start with the 500k plus defenders, then work our way down to the mid-price as rookies, and then finish up in the forward line. So, who is the man sitting at the top of the list in the 500k plus defender range? Let's take a look. At the top of the list this week, we have Bailey Dale. He's a buy now pod in my opinion, and along with Zorko is the most informed defender in the comp. He's taken around 50% of the Dogs kick-ins this year with 15 in total. Only played on 87% of the time, so come on Bailey, step out of the square, son. But that's the only downside that I can see at this point in time, aside from a potential tag if he continues to dominate. He had an indifferent start to 2024. Remember, he was relegated to that sub role, but no such issues to start 2025. He's got the back line all to himself, and I really can't see too many of his teammates stealing points from him. He's a beautiful kick, as we know. In round 1, had 29 touches, 22 of those kicks, and went at 90% efficiency. As a very nice bonus, also hit the scoreboard twice. Last week, had 31 touches, 21 of those being kicks, and also went at 90%. That's absolutely elite, and part of the reason why I'll be trading him in this week. Now, we know that kicking 2 goals a game, that's not going to be sustainable, but I think that that high efficiency can be, and that's what sets Dale apart from some other defenders that you may see on this list. He's not a contested beast by any means, certainly likes the uncontested chips, but when you do play that uncontested style of game, you do need to use it well. So Dale does that superbly, and that ratio is absolutely brilliant. So at the time of recording, his overall ownership has risen from 1.8% last week all the way up to 9.1%, and I expect that to grow as we get closer to the start of the round. The man below him, Dane Zorko, age has not slowed this man down. I'm a very happy owner. Currently the highest averaging defender with an average of 138 over the first couple of games. Was actually swung forward in round 1 when we had some injury carnage. did have a big impact. So I was a little bit concerned that Fags may switch around the magnets, but last week, back to his usual attacking defensive role, which is really good to see. Actually had a slow start to the game with a 10-point first quarter, but then, in true Zorks fashion, pulled on 62 points in the second quarter alone to be at 72 at halftime. He doesn't rely on kick-ins to bank that massive score either. He's only had 4 out of 9, then 3 out of 9, so not a whole lot, but does use it well, has played on 100% of the time from those kick-ins. Dr. Jim has got his body right, and according to Zorks, his body is feeling the best it ever has. You expect him to say that, but at his age, really, really good signs. It is a slight risk selecting him when he is that old, but if fit, he's clearly a top 3 defender with a massive ceiling and the ability to put quick points on the board. So, do you trade him in? Completely up to you, but you can see the number 1 symbol there for the average and the Mr. Burns. That's no disrespect because I love this man and he's absolutely killing it. Carl Amon, the leading kick-in taker for Hawthorn, along with the Sis Dog, who we can see below. I'm a very happy owner in a keeper draft. SDS, come at me, mate, for a possible package deal. I've got Will Day as well. I know you've got the Pepsi Max King, so let's talk about that, mate. But look, with Amon, seems to be a consistent player that you can pretty much lock in a decent score from week to week, but probably lacks that ceiling of some other players. But kudos to Carl for a very solid start. Maxi Holmes, my boy Jake has been all over this bloke in the preseason. Spills was close to bringing him in last week, and it's for good reason. He's a star. He's quick, agile, got some super run and carry, and alongside Baz will be a very dangerous combination. I'm slightly concerned that he may now be the number 1 tag target at the Cats, and I'm not sure how he'll cope with some more with closer attention, but he does have some handy DPP status, which will add some flexibility to his side. He's a number 2 CBA mid at the Cats, sitting just behind Tommy Atkins, and I expect him to continue to improve his overall game. I'll be happy to select him at the price. Jordan Clark, I'm much more keen on Jordan Clark, and look, there's always 1 or 2 blokes that you have in your side all pre-season, and you don't start for one reason or another. That man for me is Jordan Clark. I was all over him. Spoke to Damo really early on in the season. He gave him the good oil on him. He was really big into him. And look, why didn't I start him? It was simply a matter of trying to find some extra funds. Jaden Short. All right, let's move on from Short. We'll talk about him soon. But this guy's elite. He intercepts, attacks, loves to run. Didn't have a single kick in round 1, but then had the 5 last week as a bonus. It looks likely he can put at least 5 points on his average from last year. Coming off scores of 107, 122, he now faces the Eagles, and we all know what Dane Zorko did to them last week. I've got the buy now on Clark, as I see a lot of upside at the price, and as things currently sit, he looks every bit the top 6 defender. James Sicily, the ultimate swingman who can really change games in a heartbeat, playing either down back or as a key target up forward. As mentioned above, has taken 11 kick-ins, which is equal with Amon, and he has played on, again, 100% of the time. Although is a very dangerous prospect in attack and a massive weapon for the coach there is, I was going to say Clark, so it's Sammy Mitchell. I just think it's dangerous to Supercoach, and being a swingman, it's very hard to get reliable scores. And look, we know that he's going to play the majority of his time down back, but for me, just the fact that he can be sent forward is enough for me to say no, I'll go with some of the other blokes. Someone like Jack Sinclair. He was a very popular preseason pick before he went down with a niggle. I had him locked and loaded, but then got scared off a little on the weekend. Really rewarded his owners with a lovely 145 against the Cats. He isn't relying on kick-ins either, only taking 6 in total. Plays the Tigers this week, so there's every chance he puts in another 125 plus, which will give him a nice low break even for his price next week. His lowest score in game 1 was still a 95, so does have a decent floor. Had 23% CBAs in round 1, but then went back last week, purely a defensive role, didn't attend a single CBA. I'd have Zorko, Dale, and Clark probably ahead at this stage, and I don't see a lot of coaches investing in Sinclair this week, but he's certainly got the capacity and the capability to end up with the top 6 defensive average. So definitely one to have on your watch list. and will pounce when the time is right. His teammate Nazaya, I love watching this bloke play. Silky, skillful, and the future at the Saints. Playing his usual defensive role, he's taken 10 kick-ins over the first couple of weeks. Last week against the Cats, played a ripper, 29 touches, 19 of those kicks. So not as much as Dale there, but 19 out of 29. We can certainly live with that. We like that for Supercoach. 8 intercept possessions, 7 score involvements, and a direct goal assist. He's sitting behind a few others around the same price for now, but I can see him doing enough to warrant a spot in our sides at some stage. I've got him a tier down from likes of your Zorko, your Whitfield, but he's a bloke that shouldn't let you down too often. If the ceiling was higher, I think I'd be much more interested. And that bloke I just touched on, Lockie Whitfield, had the bye last week, but performed pretty well in previous weeks. Had 9 kick-ins in total, played on every time, except once, which is pretty good. When he's on, he can deliver some ripping scores for his owners, and without doubt, he's going to be one of the elite defenders in 2025. I'll probably look to target him after a tag game and hopefully pick him up closer to the 550k range at some stage. I don't think we need to rush in and get him now, but it is nice that his buy's already passed. The Shees, oh man, he's giving his owners, including myself, some headaches. Only 2 rounds into the season, many called him a preseason lock, but some people like my man Brent have already seen enough to say, nah, I'm done. I'm happy to move on. And don't get me wrong, it is really tempting. We can see the 170 break even there, the projected score of 103. We do take these projected scores with an absolute grain of salt, but if he does hit the ton, which he didn't do last week, he'll lose 30k. But we need to remember, when we're selecting premiums, the price changes don't worry us too much if we're going to hold them for the rest of the season and we're committed to doing that. So am I worried? Yeah, I am slightly. It's tempting to get him out, but I'm just holding firm for now. He's too talented to stay in this rut. I'm still confident he's a top 6 defender. We aren't getting what we paid for at the moment, but I'm sure a very good game is coming soon. Tommy Stewart. This is a really tough call for owners. If he gets up this week, I'd probably hold. Need to wait for team sheets, but if not, the decision gets harder and slightly sways me towards trading. I think in a couple of weeks, someone like, say, a Joel Frazier, who we'll talk about soon, he could be sitting at the same price as Stewart or even go past him with their respective break-evens. So I'm glad I don't need to make the decision. For non-owners, though, we can potentially pick this bloke up for an absolute bargain when that 9 drops out of his system. So definitely one to target when the time is right for sure. And Lukey Ryan has had a bit of a fall from grace, hasn't he? And Jordan Clark seems to be the main man. He's still taken exactly 50% of the total kick-ins, but he just looks a shell of his former self. His price is set to plummet, so if he can get back to his piggy ways, then we could look to jump on. I'm sure we'll have some nice ceiling games with the right matchups during the year, but at the price, there are just loads of other options in front of him. But for now, there is no reason to be seriously considering him as a trade-in option. This is very, very obvious. There's so many other cheaper options available. And his relevance in 2025 does seem pretty low. He's owned by 6.3% of the comp. And those coaches, similar to Tom Stewart, or this may even be an easy decision to Tom Stewart, depending how you look at it. Yeah, what do you do? For me, I'll just be getting out of the pick. You can see the worried symbol there. With Stewart, you can see the red flag symbol. It's not a fun time owning any of these blokes, but when they're on their game, they are some of the best of the best. On to the defenders, 250 to 500k. And the man up the top this week, big discussion point, it's the fridge Joel Frazier. My man Matty is a big fan of this bloke, and I can see why. With the midfield injury carnage at the Dogs, players such as Sanders underperforming, Jolie Boy has been given more responsibility and been handed some minutes in the midfield, and he looks great in the role. A good Horsham boy, and a mate of John O'Carroll's. He seems to be taking his game to that next level. A slight red flag was the fact that last week he was on a more moderate score before arguably one of the plays of the year, where he got the ball, had a bounce, nailed the goal in that real crucial period of the game late. I don't have the exact numbers, but from following the live scores, he received a fair boost just from that single effort. Without that goal, are we discussing him as a major trade-in target this week. How do we feel about Jolie if he only punched out a 75, 85 type score? He scored 75 on the dot in fantasy, for example. The major attraction here is the price and the fact that we've got some mid-price defensive options that are absolutely failing us to date. Yes, I'm looking at you, Pez and Shorty. The stats last week, they're decent without being extraordinary. 23 touches, a little bit handball happy with 14, laid 4 tackles, kicked 1 goal 1. Over half his touches were contested, which is great for Supercoach. His efficiency let him down at only 61%, so he'd want to slightly improve that. He seems to be an impact type player. The week before, he actually had a similar stat line, picking up 28 touches, but had less contested and an even kick-to-handball ratio. Kicked a snag, but not as impressive as the one last week, and laid a few tackles. His efficiency was also in the 60s. He did spend some time down back, as well as in the midfield, and had 6 score involvements. So, with 2 triple-figure scores, albeit against weaker midfields, and a break-even in the negatives, there is a bit to like. You actually make coin downgrading from a Pez or a Short, and with Trelaw having a setback, the mid-minutes may actually be extended in the short term at least. He's far from a guaranteed success, but with all things considering, he seems like the clear number one mid-price option down back, and he can solve some defensive problems or even some structural issues for certain teams. He's, in my opinion, the perfect upgrade if you're running 2 to 3 defensive rookies on field. At a bare minimum, he'll make you some coin and could be flipped at the right time, but there is certainly a world where this pick just doesn't work out. He's definitely making coin though. Miller, to be honest, it's just great to see this fella fit and healthy and on the park. A real talent, but the body consistently lets him down. Now, there is poor durability history, and then there is poor durability history. Wayno scares me like no other. I see him as a massive risk. The price may offset some of the risk, but I'd be scared either way. He's definitely averaging okay for the price. He's only had the 2 kick-ins this season, so it would be nice to see that increase. An option, but not one that I would personally take up. Christian Shalem, well, he's had a great start to his 2025 campaign and may be the slight beneficiary of Stephen May's absence. Salem's been the D's leading kick intake with 10 so far. Now, Jake Bowie, he's another player that I probably should be discussing here along with Salem, but I've actually left him on the list. When I just thought about Bowie then, I should have included him, so apologies for that, but I just think he's probably too much of a pod pick for me. But going back to Salem, I think he's taking advantage of some of these freebies on offer. May's due back soonish from what I know, so I assume both Salem and Bowie lose some of the kick-ins to May, as historically he's had the major monopoly on him. He had 30 touches in round 1, Christian Salem, with a very, very nice kick-to-handball ratio. One of the nicest you'll see, 27 kicks and 3 handballs. The majority of those were uncontested, but laid a few tackles to try to subsidise that. Last week, 24 touches, with a quarter of those contested, took 8 marks, laid another couple of tackles. He's never been an elite premium scorer, but he could be a decent stopgap if his good form continues. A major pod, only 1% of sides, but at 431k, you are saving a good 60k there on Jolie Boy. SDK. We talked about this bloke at great length last week in the Swordplay potty, so I'm not going to spend 20 minutes talking about him again. We talked about his role. We know what type of ruckman he is. We know that Neil Ruck's up forward, Blitzarv's down back. SDK attends most of those CBAs, controls the middle of the ground. He's about to come into some tough matchups. And the worry with SDK is obviously that flaw. So that's why I passed on him, and I'm passing on him again. But for those who have already traded him in, at a bare minimum, he'll make you some coin in the short term. But moving forward, I don't really like the pick. Kane Farrell. Well, he's the main man on kicking duties with 9 in total at Port. He's posted 2 triple-figure scores. The ceiling doesn't look overly high, but a 102 average at under 450k is certainly a win. Sits behind Jolie Boy is one of the better options around that price point, and he also shares the same buy, so there's a bit of a decision for you there. Now, Matty Roberts obviously got the buy this week, but I'll tell you what, massive fan of this pick. Kicking numbers have gone up by the week. After the opening round, we weren't expecting many, as he had 1, but That then went up to 3 in round 1. Then last week went up to 5. Now the Lizard still has that major monopoly there with 20 in total, but it's a nice little bonus for Roberts just to keep the score ticking over. He's a smart player, gets in smart positions to receive the ball, obviously has a lovely left foot, and the Lizard doesn't seem to affect him that much regardless of if he's playing that more attacking role or that lockdown role. Roberts is a ripper of a pick either way in his own right, and he's already made his owners some nice cash, so I can see him keeping, say, a D6 position in my side for the remainder of the year if things continue to go the way that they do. So if you're someone who hasn't invested in Roberts yet, he's got the bye this week. You could wait another week, even see how a Jaden Shaw goes if you've got him against St Kilda. And then you could possibly look to get into Roberts. 111 for his average so far, a break even of 57, still meat on the bone. Massive, massive fan of the Roberts pick. And this man here, Jaden, sucked me in short. I knew it would happen. I can't believe I went short over Clark. I actually deserve to be hurt by this. As a veteran coach, I should have known better. People told me, what are you doing? I then spoke with others. Nah, he's a lock. And after a wonderful first half in round 1, everything has gone completely downhill. When I looked at the DFS kick-in stats from last week's game, I thought there must have been an error. There were 14 kick-ins on offer for Richmond last week. Surely this meant Jaden Short would deliver us an absolute beauty with all of those bonuses. No, for some reason, absolutely unbeknown to me, he only took one of those kick-ins. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, one single kick-in. I've got the calculator here. To be precise, he took 7.14857114% of their kick-ins. Benny Miller had 8. Vlosten had a few. Tom Brown was gifted a couple. I was gobsmacked. If only I hadn't listened to that Uze presser, where he spun this defensive game plan that married so well with Jaden Short. Given the fact that kick-ins are in grave danger, the role isn't there, I'm out of the pick. When we have a defender like Dale, like Clark on our hands, Max Holmes, I cannot be running with a mediocre pick like Short. So for me, he's absolutely on the chopping block. But if you are someone that wants to give him another chance, he is playing St Kilda this week, who have been a great matchup, as we know. You could hold him. But for me, I'm not willing to put up with any more pain. I'm getting out now. And I've already got out from Harry Perriman. Now, I know that I'm not really featuring players with the bye or one game in their system, but we do quickly have to discuss this bloke. For me, he's a must trade out, and was last week. I jumped ship as soon as I saw the role change, and our hopes of a 95 to 100 average simply won't happen with current circumstances. It's a risky pick, but I'm trying to look for a positive. I just can't. The bloke at the top of this list is 35k cheaper, has a negative break even, and plays this week. It just makes sense to move on Perryman. Given the fact he's got the bye, he's not losing any cash this week, but he's an empty body there. And if you bring someone in, if you upgrade, then that's an extra score that can potentially or hopefully add to your best 18. If you don't like another mid-price option, you go up to a primo, 120 to 150k, or down to one of the players that we will discuss on the next slide. So either way, I'm so out of the Harry Perriman pick. Trent Rivers, well, he seems to lost some of his mid-time to the Chandler types, which is terrible for his owners. He's now spending more time down back, taking some kick-ins, but it's not the role that coach has signed up for. So he should be someone you should look to move on this week. I just don't see any upside at the price, at the role. And Colton McKercher, a supremely talented player, but doesn't seem to have the role again in 2025. If Daniel was to go down, we see him head down back for an extended period of time. Sign me up. But until then, not an option that I'm personally considering now. Alrighty, let's take a look at some of the cheapies and focus on the defenders under 250k. And to be quite honest, it is a bit of a bleak list, but we can start with a positive. As Spillsy would say, just lock him away and throw away the key. The man at the top of the list is Spillsy's new favourite, Riley Bice. Bice is life, and great to see the man deliver a 90. Has the bye this week, but surely holds his spot after that. Obviously started as a sub in week 1, but last week, wowee, started the game, albeit on the interchange bench, but had a massive, massive impact. That goal absolutely sent me to the roof, particularly, as I said, having him on field. He actually had 3 kick-ins as a sub and then 2 last week, so nice little bonus. The Swans do have some players to come back, Harry Cunningham being one of those fellas, but we'll talk about Bicey a little bit more next week. But as things currently sit, looking like a must-trade-in option when he comes back for his 3rd game on the bubble. The best option on this list as a trade-in option this week, it has to be Connor O'Sullivan. Got the nod for the Rising Star nomination last week. Played an absolute ripper. The highlight for me was his marking, some nice contested marks as well as some intercepts. That 88 in the system really bodes well for his cash gen for the next 2 weeks. And surely given the fact he won the Rising Star for the round, that buys him 2 weeks in the side. We've got Colo coming back soon from a groin, I think it is, which may be an issue for Cos. Who knows what happens with this team, with the structure? Say if Stewart's out, they could even put SDK down back, bring Stanley into the ruck. I just don't know. I'm on the fence about trading in, say, a Cos versus a Henderson. I know for lots of coaches, it may simply depend on your structure and your areas of need. But if you're in the market for a rookie defender under 150k, he's clearly a man this week. Job security moving forward, I'm not too sure on, but you've got to take him if you're looking for a rookie down back. Benny Patton, he was omitted from the side last week, but does have some handy DPP for swings. We'll see what happens when the team sheets are released, obviously on the bye. Zach Reed, man, this guy looks slow and also looks to be a slow burn, as you can see from the notes section there. Took 1 kick in last week, but that's the only positive I can see aside from good job security. So very bit disappointing to date. Oh, man. I just don't know what to say with some of these defensive rookies. Josh Sin, well, he's second for total kick-ins at Port. Only got 5, but still technically second. I see too much risk associated with durability, even job security if he doesn't consistently perform. A 59 in round 1, followed by an 82 against the Tigers. Doesn't fill me with great confidence, but if you're keen to take a punt, all the best of luck. He's a talented player, and I hope he starts to play regular games for Port. Jack O'Pryor, one of my old Lions boys, played a decent game last week, took the 2 kick-ins as a small bonus. He has held his spot this week with Ridley returning to the side, so that is a green tick. Seems like one of the rookies that may deliver you a 60, but still not confident on that, and I'd still probably avoid at the elevated price. I would be going Connor O'Sullivan, even though there's probably a little bit more risk with his job security. James Leake's job security, that may be questionable in the coming weeks, so a bit of a wait and see. If you own, you hope he holds his spot and goes a 50 plus. If you don't own him, we don't need to trade him in, particularly with an average of 39. Trainer, great job security, but ceiling looks to be capped pretty low. If he can deliver a 55 average, I'd take that for sure. And O'Connell is a bubble pass for me. Had a wonderful moment last week, which you'll remember for a long time. But without that, I think his score would have been pretty dire. A negative break-even of 3 at 119,900 goes to show that his scoring is far from ideal. And as you can see down the bottom there, we are partnering up with the wonderful blokes from Game Day Squad. Make sure that you download the app, all free to play. Use the code word PEANUT, and you can actually receive $20 worth of free packs. So there is a section where you can actually purchase some packs and some cards. You've got your diamonds, your legendaries, all the way down to your bronze and your free starter series. But if you do use that code word, you can get some free packs that usually you'd need to pay some cashola for. So thank you very much to all the boys at the Game Day Squad. This is an awesome version of fantasy football and the absolute future moving forward. Cheers, boys. On to the midfielders, 500k plus, and at the top we have Jai Caldwell. Has massively flown under the radar in the preseason, and I think needs more respect as a selection. I'll be the first one to put my hand up and say I never considered him once in my classic team. But what a player he is. Averaged 64% CBAs this year, and I've got the rock solid symbol there because I think he'll continue to play well. He may potentially lack the ceiling required to stay at the top of the midfield rankings, but I think given his game style, his floor will be decent. I couldn't go there, but if you do, you have a major pod on your hands. I'm much keener on this bloke, Connor OZ. He has rewarded his owners with a magnificent average of 129. Great bang for buck. And he's outshining many of his high-priced midfield opponents. Spillsy traded him in last week, was stoked. He delivered a nice captain score for those that gave him that responsibility. Really stepping up in the absence of Butters and Horn Francis for that matter. His top season average is around the 108 mark from memory. Should have looked that up to confirm, but he does look set to surpass that with the way things are going. I'd be happy, even though it's sideways, to trade someone like Will Day straight to Connor OZ. He's looking the goods and spewing that I didn't stick with him in the end. Joshy Dunkley has started season 2025 like a house on fire, leading the CBAs for the Lions at 82%. And leading the Lions midfield for Supercoach points as well. A no-nonsense type of footballer, continually puts his body on the line. On the weekend, took a few big hits, just got back on his feet, soldiered on to put in another ripping performance. His round one game against the Bloods was out of this world, and he was duly rewarded with a beautiful 170. I know some trade him to Neil last week, which would have actually lost you points, but I can understand why. In a way, it would have put you in a better position break-even wise for the short term. And Dunkley is basically guaranteed to make money, and Neil is close to guaranteed to lose money. So financially, it makes sense, but it's very sideways to me, and it's a very long season. There may be a game from time to time where he's got more of a defensive role. I think he can do that without the need for Berry to be in there. He's a very selfless player, is Josh Dunkley, and if the team needs him to play a role where his main focus is to negate an opposition player, he'll be more than happy to sacrifice his own game to do so. The floor is most likely still there though, tackling, contested possessions in that sort of role anyway. The Lions have a great draw coming up. Dunkley should continue to feast. So if you need to restructure and get a big dog, then I think Dunks could be your man. Libba, I love as a player, but not really as a super coach pick. He's flourished leading the Dogs midfield with Bont Trelaw's absence, but I worry if he cops another knock to the head, it may even be career over, and at his age, it does concern me. Well, he's shown with an average of 131, he is certainly not past it, and if you believe he can keep it up, it could be a real difference maker in his side. He's not for me, but if you're brave enough, I wish you all the best of luck. John Newcomb punched out a monster 149 last week, but before that only managed to score a 90 and an 81. Just not enough for me. Day seems to be copying most of the attention, so he should play with a bit of freedom, but he's a pod that isn't really high on my personal radar. Someone that was extremely high on my radar, oh man, pod lock, throw away the key type thing. It was Ed Richards. I was spruiking him all pre-season, but the calf issue gave me cold feet, and not being able to see him in action before round one meant that I had to release my man, absolutely spew him, because he's been looking fantastic, taken on more responsibility with the Dogs' injuries, stepped up to the plate well. He's just super dangerous with the ball in hand, scores a 119, 105, a solid, and is averaging a tick over 28 touches per game. So, oh man, this is a tough one. He's even been sniffing around the goals as well. Kicked one too. But one thing I would like to see him up is that tackle count. So if I could turn back time, I'd love to have your Richards, your OZ, but I'm going to have to pass on him for now and just enjoy watching him from afar and getting frustrated when he's dominating. Jordan Dawson is looking like a worthy starting pick and is leading the Crom extremely well. Very tough to tag, lethal left boot, although that has been off at times, particularly in the last couple of years. He can play anywhere in the ground and lead attacking defender, good on a wing, great inside, very dangerous up forward, can take a nice grab. And to be quite honest, there's not much that he can't do. He can drift out of the game at times, but this year he's been a bit more consistent from quarter to quarter. If you are looking at someone around the price, I think he's a fine and reasonable selection. Plays North this week, so we could also have a ceiling game on our hands. And Giordano's teammate in Matty Crouch is right on par Supercoach-wise with his captain, also averaging 114. He's always had his lovers, had his haters. Some say he's past it and too slow, but others, like my man Brent, think that he could actually be a relevant pod option for us. He's making the move and bringing Crouchy in this week. It's certainly a bold move, but he's confident he can deliver as a low ownership player. He's never had any trouble finding the pill. We know this. It's been more about those metres gained, 31 touches in round 1, 32 touches last week. The main concern is the big range. 84 points, all the way up to that big 143 last week. Surely stays in Adelaide's best side, but I'm slightly worried if he underperforms, his spot may be slightly in jeopardy. Good to see some defensive pressure with 8 tackles on the weekend. I don't think he's a pick for many coaches out there, but Brent, all the best of luck with your pod, bloke. I hope he works out well. And I don't know if you can see in the notes section there, but I've got your beautiful face there as a bit of kudos to you, mate. On to the next slide, and Cripper, he's been solid over the first couple of weeks after copping some attention as usual. 81% CBA rate, but I don't think we need to say too much here. You hold if you own, particularly for the nice early draw. And if you don't own him, there's no need to trade him for now. Zachy Merritt, geez, this bloke must get so frustrated captaining the Bombers at times. I genuinely feel for him because he's such a gun, tries his guts out every week. Janath actually has a theory that when proud captains like Zerrett come off a major loss, that they tend to bounce back big time the next week and have an absolute blinder. When I say bounce back, this is not Merritt himself, but he will absolutely go above and beyond as captain to ensure the team does not put in an insipid performance like that again. In saying that, I don't know if he can possibly do much more. 36 touches, 6 clearances, nearly 800 metres gained, and 4 snags. What an elite performance, and hats off to the man. Definitely a player I would like to target, but after his bye. Andy Brayshaw, I've got the safe as houses symbol on him. Surprisingly tagged in round 1. Could not believe that. Thought 100% it's going to Sarong, but still managed to hit triple figures. And that was really good to see. And it's also good to see that it was Sarong that copped most of the attention last week as expected. A sigh of relief for Andy owners like myself. He's got a great bye, a nice upcoming fixture, plays the A Eagles this week. I still think he's a fine pick, even though his average of 104 is below par for now. His CBA rate sits at 75%, so it would be nice to see that in the 80s, but I don't think there's any major worries there. Last week, his disposal efficiency, absolutely elite. That is a positive, going at 100%. But the negative, I suppose, is that if a few of those possessions don't hit the target, then he doesn't get to a triple-figure score. I must admit that when I look at someone like a Rosie, who I had in my side pre-season, compare him to Andy, I do have some buyer's remorse, but at the same time, I'm backing my decision to select him over Sarong, and he'll be able to cover those tricky buys, and that will be really handy for us. Still got a lot of faith in Andy Brayshaw. Will Day. Ooh, another tough one. What do you do if you own? For me, he's a likely trade-out target this week. As you can see from the symbol, I'm worried about the tag. He's then got the bye, which means 2 weeks of nothing much, likely. But after that, there are some rainbows and sunshine with his fixture. The question is, can you hold out that long, or do you sideways to a Callaghan, say upgrade to a Rosie now? You can get away with holding in a best 18 week if you've got other problems and priorities to deal with. Keep in mind though, that his short-term cash gen will likely be non-existent after the Bedford tag. A highly owned player that may actually be good to anti-pod for now. For non-owners, we can just sit back, even potentially trade him in at a discounted price for a quick in and out move when the fixture comes good. And believe me, I know a lot about a quick in and out move, if you know what I mean. But moving on very quickly, keeping it G-rated, I think LDU, Track, Sarong, they're players that we watch and target at the right time. You know, Sarong, he's copped a tag, spent some time forward, but this week plays the Eagles. Obviously just mentioned that with Andy, and could absolutely feast. One reason why I faded was, although he started the 2024 season on fire, he only scored 125 plus in one game from round 10. And I wouldn't be trading any of these players out either, because you selected them for a reason, and there's no reason to suggest that they won't come good and they won't be good picks moving forward. There's a chance Track gets forward DPP status, but not majorly likely at this stage. He teased us at, 34 point something percent last year, just 1% off the DPP threshold for forward status. And look, it's very hard to rely on that, so I wouldn't be relying on that when we're looking at trading in players. We need to be extremely confident. Look, if we're trading in round 5 and someone's sitting at, say, 40 to 45%, then you're pretty confident that you can lock them in for that DPP. But with only 2/3 games in, it's very, very hard to predict that. And even think back to last year, if we go back to LDU, lots trade him out after his indifferent start, but the coaches that actually held him like Janath and kept the faith were duly rewarded when he actually hit some form. So something to keep in mind when your premiums are slightly underperforming. And I know all about that because my boy Stocky Neal absolutely destroyed me in round 1 when he copped the Jordan tag. It was a Supercoach nightmare, but I guaranteed he'd bounce back, and he didn't let me down with a 130 plus, a very decent captaincy score against the Eagles. So let's talk about it. So likely to lose cash in the short term, but with a 125 plus score on the weekend, that break even does start to go down. Some did do that sideways move to Dunkley, which I didn't like, but look, I get it. He didn't touch the ball for 2 quarters in a week, so I do get it. I get the frustration, but remember, you were simply locking in a loss. Last week, he picked up a lazy 35 touches, 8 clearances, 10 inside 50s, kicked a snagged. I think he surpassed his possession count against the Swans in the second quarter last week. The man can just score so quickly. I'll give you an example. In the first 2 minutes of the third quarter, he punched out 17 points in 2 minutes to get his score up to an 85. He turned up with 8.5 minutes to go in the third. So just in that quarter, he collected 12 touches, 9 of those contested, 6 clearances. You know, someone at the Lions had to step up, set the standard, and Stocky did that as a leader of the club. So a massive bounce back game, and hopefully owners like me get to see a lot more of this. And you will be able to see just down the bottom of the slide here that you are all invited to join the Supercoach Hub / Supercoach Swordplay Discord live poker tournament. All you need to do is sign up to the Supercoach Hub Discord. All the details will be there. The more the merrier. I am a big poker fan myself. Used to work for the APL, the Australian Poker League, when I was doing my university studies for about 3 to 4 years. Took out a regional tournament, took out the Bendigo region there. So absolutely love my poker. So make sure that you join us there, and it's going to be a ripping event. Onto the midfielders, 250 to 500k, and this has been a very popular price range this year. Up the top, we have Josh Ward, an early draft pick from a few years back. To be honest, I didn't know if he was going to make, but great to see him make a good fist of it to start the year. A pod pick averaging 93, and we'll take that for under 285k. Not someone I'm looking at, but could be a decent draft selection. Someone I think will be a very popular trade in this week is my man Finn Callaghan, the $15 million man, and he's looked every bit of it so far this year. In the opening round, dominated the game, did absolutely everything, a bunch of 1-2s, lovely run and carry, contested ball wins, burning off opponents with his pace, work rate, silky skills. Oh, he did everything. The scoreboard impact, absolutely loved what I saw in that opening game. He seems to be that modern day midfield prototype, and I'm up with the hype. In round 1, looked very impressive again, especially in that first half. Slightly faded late, but without a doubt, one of the Giants' best. In his pre-bye game against the D's, 31 touches, and was the Giants' best midfielder. Leading the Giants mids for CBAs with a rate of 78%. Had a bit less time in there last week with Tom Green's return, but I don't think that Green affects Finn too much. I'm not saying Finn is an absolute lock and load keeper, but I do see a world where he stays M8 for me for the entire year. My big call is that he can go better than 108, which is Rosie's career best average to date. if I was to select any other mid-pricer here, apart from Oliver, he's definitely the one. Such an entertaining player to watch. He's got scope, in my opinion, to be in one of the best handful of players in the comp. So many tools, so much upside, and I can certainly see why the Saints are interested. Jack Ross, on the opposite end of the spectrum, has the trap symbol next to his name. Played a blinder leading the Tigers midfield in their victory over the Blues, but last week produced an absolute stink with a score of 35. Way too volatile, and a pod we can simply take off our list now. Jake Saligo, another interesting pick, not getting near as much love as some of the others, but the average suggests that, again, he needs to be respected. 29 touches for a 114 against the Saints, followed by a 108 against the Dons, averaging 28 touches, 5 tackles per game, along with a 50% CBA rate. He's really stopping James Peatling, who's at the bottom of this table, from being Supercoach relevant. I'll quickly touch on Peatling now. I think he's a sell. Roll isn't there, ceiling isn't there, and there are players 150k below and 100k more expensive that I would much rather have in this slot. And I think it's basically a waste of a midfield position as things currently sit. The same can't be said for Clary. He was back to his best last week, hitting a 130 after blowing out some cobwebs in round one. We've got a lot of players to discuss here, so no need to go into detail. Everyone owns him, and if you don't, you need to get him in. It's as simple as that. A player on Mount Rushmore, no discussion needed. We've all got him anyway. If you don't, please rectify that this week. Adam Chera, he's been impressive in his first 2 games, hit the ton on both occasions, but the role's a little bit strange. For the first half, plays predominantly in the midfield, plays really well, then seems to spend the third quarter down back. Then he returns to the midfield in the fourth, where he looks at his best. It's a bit of a tough one to gauge. What are you doing, Vossi? He's currently the 4th cog in that midfield behind Cripps, Hewitt and Walsh. When I originally selected him, I thought he could even be number 2. Walsh is sitting at 55% CBAs. Cherry's sitting at 53. So it is very close there. Both of his first halves have been great. Then his third quarters have been quiet. But then he ends the game well when he's thrusted back into his usual role. I've got him as my number 3 pick on this list. 26 touches, 6 tackles, 106 against the Tigers in round 1, then 113 against the Hawks from 28 touches, 5 tackles and a goal. Means that he has been a successful pick so far. That's all he needs to do to get through to the buys. Then I think we can look to even luxury upgrade him. Tommy Powell tricked some of us last year, but seems to have developed some more consistency to his game in 2025, and I'm obviously looking at the Community Series game, even the practice games as well, averaging 52% CBAs, just behind the Shees at 53%, and 85 against the Dogs, 124 against the Ds is decent, but are we really picking him over, say, Finn Callahan? Probably not for me. And Will Ashcroft, I'm an advocate for holding, mainly due to his friendly fixture. For those who pegged him as the 3rd midfield cog, he isn't quite there yet. Clug is still ahead at this stage. A poor showing in round 1, but came back, particularly in the second half of last week's game against the Eagles. He's been starting on the bench with his brother, and then he's that first rotation into the midfield. I wouldn't be trading him into my side, but I would be holding just for now anyway. We know what he can do at his best. And over the next month, we should expect to see a ceiling game or 2. So as a Lions man, it is such a pleasure to watch this bloke do his thing. And as an owner, I'm expecting that you have a bit of a smile on your face over the next few weeks. On to the midfielders under 250k, and we do have some really nice options here. Sitting right up the top, we've got Noddy with a very healthy average of 83 over his first 2 games. He's been rewarded with a very low break-even of -75. So shout out to Damo, who's been red hot on him from day one. A mature body, who's already shown in previous seasons he can have a real impact at the level. With Young out, who's received some high CBA minutes in game 1, dropped right off in game 2, but nonetheless still scored a ripper. Finds appeal with these, gets involved in chains, very strong lad. He's the definition of a must-have rookie, and if you don't already own him, he should be close to your number 1 trading priority this week. He's set to make some rapid cash. Job security for a player under 200k is the best of the best. No discussion needed here. Get him in and confidently play him on field. Another must-have rookie is Xavier Lindsay. Skillful player, has a wing spot locked down for now. Has already shown he can have an impact at the level as well. Only 2 games of his career, he looks like an absolute star. highly rated at the Ds, backed up that round 1 score of 86 with a nice 78 last week, averaging 21 touches. But what's more impressive to me is his tackle count. 12 in total, and that's 3 more than Big Tristan Sherry. So the young man isn't afraid to get his hands dirty. Coach will love to see that. A priority trade in for me this week. And if you're looking for someone at an absolute bargain basement price, then mature age of Jack Henderson, he could be the man for you. If you're a bit of a tight ass, want to save some pennies on a Lindsay, for example, then it's certainly not a bad option to look at his more affordable teammate. I think they are both terrific options. I think Lindsay is in front because of his talent and job security. But for Henderson, scores of 55, 72, that is all we need for a 99k player. He's kicked a goal in each of his games. Unlike other rookies, has that mature age body that can take a knock or two. Collected 13 touches in each of his first couple of games with pretty much an even kick-to-handball ratio, average 4 tackles, so good to see he provides some defensive pressure. I think he can hold his spot in the side, but the Ds do have the likes of May, Pickett, particularly Melksham to come back. I don't even know if Melksham is in their best side, but if Henderson is named this week without the sub-vest, he seems to be a fine trading option and one I would recommend at the price. Mitch Nevitt had a better round 1 than he did round 2, but solid performances from the young man. Scored a nice 82 in round 1, followed by 57. And what I really like about this pick is the fact that he's the 3rd midfield cog behind Atkins and Holmes with a 59% CBA rate over his first couple of games. The other major strength to Nevitt's game is his tackling. So he's actually averaging 9 a game so far. So again, surely that defensive pressure and effort bodes well for his job security. Obviously, Baz was missing last week, but I don't think that should affect him too much. We're labelling him as one of those tier 1 rookies, and I think that he, as well as your Lindsays and your O'Driscolls, is basically a must-have rookie that we should have in our spots. Levi Ashcroft, a young gun, has already made an impact. Now, I am absolutely biased here with the pick because I love the man. You know, I barrack for the Lions, but we call him Bomb, brother of Norm. He's not seeing much midfield time, but he's a bloke that can score anywhere on the ground. Basically a lock for round 6 forward DPP, which can allow us to move him to the forward line for some more stability up there if your midfield's stacked. Talked a lot about him in the rookie data dump, and again, he was one of the big 4. We all agreed is a must-have. Just get him in. Not much discussion needed here. Murphy Reed set the game alight in round 1 with 4 snags in very quick succession. What worried me was the fact that he only scored 50 points for his efforts, but he managed to back that up with a solid performance against the Bloods, scoring 75 points from just 14 touches and a couple of tackles, as well as the one behind. So I've got him a tier below the big 4, not a must trade in, but if you own him, you're happy. Cambriali's been okay. I think he'll be a bit of a slow burn. You can see in the notes section there. He can just sit on our benches, hopefully make us 150k. No need to trade him in or out though. Was sub last week. Is that a slight concern? Maybe, but I think that he's got that role for now. Hasty, I have there with an asterisk. He's only played the 1 game, looked great and a half, then got subbed and omitted last week. Very, very unlucky, but a lot of teams own him, and I think this is a week to move him on to a cash generator. Super unlucky for the kid and owners because he looked really good. If he's named back in the side, you could keep on to him, but remember he's a week behind with that cash gen. Sam Laylaw played out of his skin in round 1 and looked like a must-have rookie. A week later, all of a sudden we've got big question marks at the price with players such as Noddy, Lindsay, Ashcroft, Henderson, Nevitt, all posting higher 2-round averages. It's hard to justify the higher price tag. For me anyway, he's down in the order of priorities. In saying that, the talent is obviously there. He should receive forward DPP. Job security is fantastic. We've already seen him have a good impact in Richmond's win. If you own all the above players and want to bring him in, then go for it. But I don't see the upside with the high price tag when comparing him with some of our other options that I just listed. Finn O'Sullivan is a starting pick I wish I could reverse. I was never on him, but made moves to bring him in after Levi was originally announced as a sub. Never been an accumulator, but thought the talent and the role at North Melbourne was there. He'll get defensive DPP, which is some sort of green tick, but players well below his price are offering a lot more than him. And even though that JS is fantastic and he is an obvious talent, I've seen enough and I'm downgrading to a cheaper rookie to free up some funds. Sid Draper looks set to be an absolute star. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for us, super coaches, he has started sub in both games. As a result, his break-even sits at 60, and one would think if he started to sub again, then he should lose coin, become much more affordable when he starts to get full games. So he's definitely one to monitor, but one that we definitely don't jump on now. And the bloke I need to touch on at 191,200 is Elijah Sardis. I had a rant on the Swordplay pod about his tog. What is going on? Just give him time. Now, some people have said that they're just easing him back in because he's missed a bit of football. That may be the case, but I just cannot understand why coaches give players between 50 to 60% tog in non-sub-affected games. It just doesn't make sense to me, but was really impressive last week. The obvious issue here is the fact that he's got that broken hand. So he'll miss this week. He's got the bye the week after, and then potentially comes back after that. Someone else may potentially come back, which may affect him, and that's Darcy Parish. So there are some question marks and some red flags here. If you could guarantee me that he keeps his spot, look, even with that tog, I'd probably still hold on to him, because what he did last week in that limited time on ground was absolutely fantastic. But missing for 2 weeks, other players, even someone like a Henderson, will most likely go past him price-wise in the next 2. It is a bit of a tough hold. So for lots of people, it might be a choice between, say, a Sardis and an O'Sullivan. Drop one of those high-price rookies, bring in one of the cheaper ones. If you're choosing between the two, it's completely up to you. I like Sardis more than I like O'Sullivan, but you know that Sardis is going to be missing for the next couple of weeks. So a tough decision, but we do have some really nice options on our hands. On to the big boys in the ruck, and I have limited the options here. At the top of the list, we have Matty Flynn, but don't get too excited, because this is a bit of a rule breaker, as he's only played the one game. And why has he only played the one? Because he was dropped like a hot spud last week for BJ Williams, and at this stage, I'm not even sure if or when he comes back in. I'd be shocked if he didn't get another shot soon enough, but there's no guarantee. Personally, I think he was stiff to get dropped after an 87 against one of the toughest matchups you can get in Wits. But it's an awkward situation, particularly if you've got him at flex. If you've got him in your R2 slot, then you're in a deep spot of bother if he doesn't get selected this week. The best 18 is saving some coaches in that position at the moment, but I'll be worried moving forward. If he's named, then a pretty easy hold for me at this point, but if not, you simply need to move him on. If selected with BJ, then there's every chance he could lose his CBA time as a main ruck and play some more time forward. I'm just not too sure, and there are lots of question marks, and because there are those question marks, I can't advise anyone to hold a player at 260k with poor job security. He's a trade out for me, but keep an eye on the teams come Thursday night. His teammate Archer Reed, he could actually make way for Flinny. He could be the man that goes out. Not overly impressive last week, and what was it, towards the end of the game, the bloke just could not move. They were playing in shocking conditions, so I'll give him a pass, as most players were cramp him up. But aside from the handy DPP, I see no reason to trade him in. Reed for Boyd is a bit of a waste in my opinion. That's probably the trade you'd be making if you did get him in, because he's just simply not scoring well enough to warrant using a trade to get him in. So an easy pass for me. The generational TDK, as Janath would put it, is in fine form, and a player with enormous upside at the price. Scored a lovely VC score of 140 plus in week 1. Then followed that up with another super performance, but his score really didn't reflect his actual impact, in my opinion. And the issue for Tommy in that particular game was that he was stuck on the bench for about 10 minutes during that really crucial period. Big scaling was being rewarded to players that were having a big impact during that time. So if he was on the ground, I could see him go close to matching last week's score, but it's not to be. It was not to be, and a little bit frustrating because I did have the VC on him for the second week in a row, but we have to live with a lower score. Pitto, he's still out injured, but surely not even crazy Vossi would take TDK out of the ruck. A very highly owned player as well, but for good reason. And if you are in the market for a ruckman, he's probably the number 2 option for me. The number 1 option is extremely close to a must-have, in my opinion, and that is Big Roo Tristan Xerri. Continued where he left off from last year, and look, I'm not locking it in now, but definitely in the fight for that number one ruck average again. Most people were expecting a tough matchup for Xerri last week, but he monstered Max Gawn, and look, there were definitely other factors in play. Maxi wasn't near his best, got some stuff going on in his life, the poor fella, but Xerri in his own right looked fantastic, and believe it or not, I think there's even more upside. He only laid 9 tackles over the past 2 weeks, and only the 2 last week. He usually lays 9 a single game. So, as we like to say, more meat on the bone. And from the eye test, as well as the stats, he certainly improved his ruck craft, and it's good to see him add some strings to his already big bow. You can pretty much lock this guy in with great confidence, and regardless of matchup, he has the ability to deliver you a nice captain score week upon week. So, if you're in the position where you've got Matty Flynn in that R2 slot, he's not named this week, I just say that you try to go up to Tristan Xerri. I'm assuming most people already have TTK, but if you don't, here's the other option that I'd definitely look at there. Rowan Marshall, looking good for DPP as things currently sit. However, I don't think it'll happen. This is with the round 6 set of DPPs anyway. Reason for this is that he's back to playing that number one ruck role with Boyd out of the team. In round 1, he spent most of his time up forward, but I don't now see that happening for the short term anyway. Look, Ross may change things up, but also keep in mind Max King will be returning, which will put extra pressure on the big men selection at the Saints. He's one to wait for, and if he does eventually get that DPP, then definitely someone I'd look to get in my forward line, but I don't really see him competing with the top rucks at this stage. The big Nank the Tank really let his owners down last week after a solid round 1 performance. Look, the Tank ran out of ammo, which was sad for his few owners, and this is the issue when you're selecting a pod over a popular pick like a Xerri. If it doesn't work, it really hurts you. Look, leading a young team would be a big responsibility, but as a rookie player, what a man to line up to next to on the field. You'd have very, very high confidence that he's got your back and he'll lead the way. But look, with Nank, it's not all doom and gloom. I think he can bounce back, and I do actually rate the pick. Max Gawn. Now, this is a tough situation for owners because we really don't know exactly what's going on with him. It's a private matter, but something is going on with him, and it obviously affected his performance on the weekend. I think it's more of a mental strain, but that can be even as tough as a physical injury at times. So at 668,900 with a break-even of 180, it's not looking great. The projected fall, is 31,500 if he goes around to 109. Now, Janath's got a bit of a theory that when teams have a bad loss, just like his Eric, who we mentioned, that the captains come back strong. And Max Gawn is one of the only players in the comp where you could say, I would not be surprised at all if he goes a 180 plus. He's got that potential in him. We've seen it many times before. So I don't know what I'd do if I was an owner. If you can, say, downgrade to a Xerri, a DeConning. Look, Xerri isn't even much of a downgrade, isn't it? But let's just say maybe a DeConning, and you can use that 100k to go a short up to a Clark or a Dale or get a Perriman out of your side, then it's something that I would consider. But at the same time, you'd be absolutely kicking yourself starting this bloke, having the confidence in him, then trading him out, and he comes out and goes a 150 plus, and all of a sudden, he's not actually dropping that much. The next week after, he could easily put another 150 on. So that's the issue with trading out Max Gawn. I've got the GOAT symbol there as well as a worried symbol, because it does worry me. It does worry me, but the decision is all yours. Good luck with it, because I just don't know what I'd be doing. On to the forwards, 500k plus, and as you can see, only 4 names on the list, so I'll keep this one pretty quick. Up the top, we've got Isaac Rankin, has had a fantastic 2 weeks, albeit he was managed in the thumping win against the Bombers last week. Super frustrating as an owner, but in positive news, at least it wasn't due to injury. He actually got scaled around 8 points just for sitting on the bench, which was very, very handy. With question marks over Baz and the already high ownership of Daniel McRae, I have him as a buy now with confidence. The only green break even on this list and the inform forward out of the 500k plus options. Look, we discussed in the pod who are the must-have premiums, if any, and this bloke is pretty close. I think he's pretty close. So a very important piece and a nice pillar in our forward line, and I would be more than happy to jump on this week if I wasn't already an owner. Dogger Jackson, the swingman, the number one ruck in Shrek's absence, but at the price with the 3-round average of 94, we're not paying that much for someone like a Dogger when we've got our McRae's, our Daniels, and some of our cheaper options in 2025. Dylan Moore is a pod, hasn't worked out so far, but with future potential DPPs incoming, he may actually find it difficult to remain a top 6 contender. But Moore is the type of player to bang out a couple of 140s and get right back in the frame. So one to monitor, but not too relevant as things currently sit, with an average of 80 and a break-even of 131. Past me, as you can see in the notes section there. And I should actually go through all the notes sections as well. I do forget that some of the new people won't actually recognise what the symbols are. So you can see with Dogger Jackson there, I've got the Shrek symbol, because obviously Shrek's out at the moment, and he is that swing man. You can see the swing. He's obviously playing in the ruck. So they're not just crazy random symbols that are there. They actually do have a bit of meaning behind them. And you can see down the bottom here, we've got the horns, the horny man there, and I also have the hold symbol there. Look, I must admit, I didn't see this on my Supercoach bingo card this early in the season, and after a poor round 1 performance, we expect him to bounce back big against the Tigers, but what did he deliver? A paltry 61 that didn't even feature in many teams' best 18. What on earth is going on here? Even Sampao Pepper outscored him this week. I can understand those that are keen to trade him, move him on, but surely this is 100% a hold. We're all suffering. He has to come good. I'm afraid that for those that jump off early, you're simply locking in that loss, just like those that traded Lockie Neal out straight away after round 1, and risking anti-potting someone like a Horn Francis could be really dangerous. If you've got the guts to do it, and he continues to push out 60s and 70s, then you are laughing, and kudos to you, well done, you'll be ahead of the pack. But personally, just think it's a bit of a dangerous move. And you can see down the bottom there as well, in the next couple of days, I'm getting my hands on our new rugby polos. These are absolutely elite, look fantastic with the bright colours there, the green, black, I say bright and it's got black, and the white, the Supercoach Swordplay colours, the OG colours. So if you are interested in pre-ordering, jump on the website. You'll be absolutely wrapped having this thing on your body. On to the forwards, 250 to 500k, and the man up the top, wowee, the king is back. A 2-round average of 145, a negative break-even of 69, and with just a low ton, he'll be looking to rise close to 80k this week. Kudos to you, Jack. Well done, mate. Super stoked for him, and super stoked for all of us owners. So that's all I need to say on the pick. We've all got him just super wrapped. And if you check out the Captain's Corner video, I think you'll find that this bloke features pretty highly on there this week. Caleb Daniel is another very highly owned pick. Mid-forward status. It would be really handy if he didn't have that midfield status and we could get him as that defensive forward, but we're not going to complain. 269,100 with an average of 99. Again, a break-even in the negatives. Nothing to dislike about this pick. Now, the next two blokes, Chandler and Silvani, I've got the trap symbol on. Now, don't get me wrong. If Chandler comes out and gets an 80, as you can see there, he makes a nice 50k. Is he going to keep the role? Is he going to put in another performance like that? I'm just not too sure. So there's no way that I'd be paying 340k for a bloke like this. You look at someone like Jack McRae, 50k above him, or I'd be just going down at this stage. And Silvani, look, it may work for him. It could. But am I confident? No, I'm not. I'm not spending 260k on him, unfortunately. Now, Baz Smith, wowee. As you know, or as most people would know, I faded Baz to start. And after round 1, wowee, I thought my season was over, but we've been given a bit of relief here, and wowee, there are going to be a lot of people that are very, very keenly eyeing the team sheets. If he comes back this week, I would not be trading into him. I would be giving him at least that extra week, just so you can take a look at him again, make sure he's all good, and then you can jump on. I don't think it's now worth getting on this bloke early. The whole idea was the fact that, well, the thought was the Cats are playing the Saints, got pumped the week before, Baz could do some major damage, but that's not actually the case at the moment because he's already obviously missed that game. So I'd be holding. If you're an owner and he misses another week, I would be holding as well. You should have traded last week if you had any sort of question marks. So as a non-owner, don't trade him in this week. As an owner, you simply hold. Rolly Thilthorpe, you can see that I've got something new in the notes section there, and that's actually Wiz Supercoach's little icon there, because he's on this bloke. He's Wiz's pod. Wiz is an Adelaide man, and he's almost averaging 100. He was big on this bloke, and what a talent he is. Now, a super pod selection, but I think you would be brave. Hopefully it works out for Wiz, and if you want to jump on board, you'll be in very good company there, but at this point in time, probably a no for me. Josh Simpkins playing a really good captain's game at the moment. Not spending a heap of time in the midfield, under 30% CBAs, but having a bit of an impact up forward, averaging 109 over his first 2 games. With a low break-even of 24, he'll make some cash in the short term. Do we look to bring someone like a Simpkin in that at that price? Look, I'd probably go up to a Rankin or down to more of a value option. Even wait for Baz if you don't have him there yet. But if you are one of the few coaches that started him, kudos, because he's had a brilliant start to his 2025 campaign. Matt Kennedy has been getting a bit more midfield time, given the fact that your Bonts, Trelaws are out of the side. Sanders, right down the bottom, is not impressing. But moving forward, I don't know if there's a great chance that he'll remain a keeper in our side, and spending 414k just doesn't really work for me. There's not enough meat on the bone here. Again, similar to a Simpson, I'd probably just go up or down here. Parker, same with him. He's a pass for me as a trade-in option. If you own him, you could hold. You could hold. You're not desperate to trade out. He should make some cash. Even if he goes around to 70, he'll still make over 10k, so not the worst of our problems, but I wouldn't call him a successful starting pick to date. Sam Darcy is absolutely generational, and I reckon we'll be sitting here in a couple of years' time referring to him as the most unstoppable player in the comp. He's got the scope to do that. When his hands are at his highest reach, when those arms are up high, there's no defender in the comp that can go with him. So as a classic selection, I think we're a little bit risky here. As a draft selection, brilliant. I've got him in a keeper league and extremely happy about that. And the man down the bottom, Riley Sanders, been extremely disappointing. We've talked about him a bit. In the potty a couple of weeks ago, one thing that we discussed was the fact that he's got so much opportunity, but he just hasn't taken it with both hands. 63 for an average, 64 for a break even. It's actually in the red, and that's hugely concerning. So it is definitely time to jump off the pick if you haven't already. Look at his price compared to Baz. I'd actually rather own Baz on field than Sanders the way he's going. So see you later, Riley. I think he's an absolute sell. And we'll finish off the first episode of the Supercoach stock market for 2025 with the forwards under 250k. And the man up the top is Sam Davidson. As we've said a few times already this week, a week is a long time in football. And all of a sudden, Sam Davidson sits at the top of the 250k forwards. A much better performance after a shocker in round 1. Looked much more confident like he was in the Community Series game. And I'm confident that he can impact at the level, and they'll continue to persist with him. I'm not calling him an absolute must-have, but if you look at the options here at 113k, he's got the highest average and lowest break-even. It does make sense to bring him in if you are looking for a rookie forward. 72 points from 15 touches and a few tackles is decent without being absolutely spectacular. Constantine has a nice and low break-even, but I'm not a fan of his role or job security, so I would be passing on him. Elijah Hewitt, he's been a decent selection for us, played 3 solid quarters of football last week. He was most likely on track for around an 80, but like many others, slowed down the last quarter. in very trying conditions. They rate him highly at the Eagles, so he'll continue to get games. A slight concern may be some management, or a management game might be the sub, because he hasn't played much footy in the past couple of years, and I don't think they'll want to run him into the ground. His DPP, that's really handy, adds flexibility for future trades, and he is spending some time in the CBAs. I thought he was a little fumbly at times last week, but hopefully that's just blowing out some cobwebs, regaining some touch, and as I've mentioned, the conditions were very tough, so not a must trade in, similar to Davidson, but if you need to replace a dead rookie, I'd be happy to advocate bringing him in. Maxi Hall looked great the week before, and some viewed him as a must-have, but a week later, lots of us non-owners are losing a little bit of interest and prioritising other players. Another with handy DPP, but the issue is that his nice round one score will be the first one out of his system. Someone like Davidson, on the other hand, the nicest score, the 72, will be in for 2 weeks rather than just the one. In positive news, the Saints are playing Richmond this week, and that should allow him to post one of his better scores for the year, you would say anyway. So as an owner, all good, but as a non-owner, it's not a must trade in like we thought it may be before the Geelong game. I still think he's fine to bring in. As I said, playing Richmond, hopefully he can get a nice score early. But yes, certainly don't move mountains or really put a high priority on someone like a Max Hall. Connor Stone should hopefully keep his spot in the side. Had the bye last week, which might be good for his body. Nothing flashy, nothing sexy about the pick. We just hope he makes us, 150k, so we can replace him with a nice shiny rookie when the time is right. But was actually a very handy loophole for many last week. The next one on the list we have is Harry Armstrong from the Tigers. Now, he's shown a bit, but there's just no need to trade him in over some of the others. It's the same as Curtin, not enough scoring potential in the role, and he's got a slightly elevated price there. Tyrell Dewar played a blinder last week, and I actually had him in the best 5 players on the field in the first half. It was like lightning, causing the Lions some headaches with his attack, and the issue is the fact that he didn't look anywhere near as good the week before, and his role was different. He had a bonus of 4 kick-ins in round 1, still didn't lead to a decent score. None last week, but we see him play really well. If he was priced at 123k or below, I'd be really interested. He passed my eye test with flying colours, but consistency may be an issue, especially playing in a struggling side. So I hope he goes well, but I'm going to let him go through to the keeper just for now. Joe Berry, again, has bright future. This guy has decent job security, but it's extremely hard to score well in his role. A pass for me at the 140k range. I'm not going to go right into his stats. Similar to Barry Kako, great job security, but I wouldn't be rushing to trade him in. Looked sublime in the Community Series game. Looked great in round 1, but last week, I think he was dealing with some sickness or a bit of a niggle. Didn't put his best foot forward. It would be a scary score if he did manage to impact the scoreboard, but he'll have his high-scoring games paired with a few stinkers here and there. It's just the nature of the role, his experience, and to be honest, another drive-by, sorry Essendon supporters, but Spills has given Essendon more grief than me. It's the team he plays for as well. So, yeah, not a huge advocate for trading him in, but if you've got him, yeah, it's all good. He should be fine. Sam Powell Pepper, SPP, made amends after a, what do we call it? I was going to say a shocking round 1 performance, but an absolute abysmal performance. So below par, it's not funny, but I did guarantee an 80 plus on the potty last week, and the big bald man delivered 3 snags and showed us why he was voted in as a leader of the club. Some traded him out, and that's fair enough. But keep in mind that the 18 will be the first score out of his system, and the 83 will remain there for 2 price rises. So money to be made, even if he scores, say, a 60 this week. So he's a hold for me, but you certainly don't need to trade him in. And the last man that we will talk about this week, and I'm sorry, but we are finishing on a bit of a negative here. Hugo. This is nothing personal, because I'm sure he's a lovely young man. But it was so good as a previous owner to see the back of him last week. As soon as Supercoach opened after round 1, I took about 3 seconds to trade this bloke out. The tog just isn't there. I should have known better. So my mistake, I'll own it, but I swiftly rectified it, and lucky I did, because the poor bloke was relegated to the sub role last week and scored a 25. So with a break even already in the red at 59, even if he's not starting as a sub, I think he's a must trade out option, in my opinion. So, Hugo, I'm very, very sorry, but my recommendation to owners is just cut your losses and get out of the pick. So that's it for this week, guys. Hope you enjoyed. All the best of luck with your trade ins and your trade outs, and I'll see you soon in the next one. All the best. Cheers, bye.